I am Brian O'Hara. I'm representing Congressman Kevin Hern's office. I'm interviewing Mr. James Housman on September 12th, 2021 at 9 a.m. at our district office, Cityplex Towers in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Also present is Corinne Coberly, who is assisting with the equipment. This interview is being conducted for the Veterans History Project. So, Mr. Housman, where and when were you born?
I was born in Webb City, Missouri, 12/8/24.
And what are your parents' names? Your parents' names?
My parents' name was Cecil and Mary Ann Housman.
What were their occupations?
Well, we had a small dairy farm. My dad and my mother did, but my dad worked mostly in the mines there, and then later he worked for the water company and a company by the name of Vickers in Joplin.
Very nice. Do you have any siblings? And if so, what are their names?
But yes, I had a brother by the name of Cecil Jr., and I had an older sister by the name of Jay.
And what primary and secondary schools or colleges did you attend?
Well, I went through Webb City High School. I was the class president in senior year. And then after high school, and after later on, I went on to Kansas State University, and I got a BS degree in science. And then I went back later and got a master's degree in ag education. And I taught at Kansas State University 2 years in the ag education program. I would go to Kenya and pick up international students that wanted to be county agents, like our county agents were, but they didn't know how to run machinery. They didn't know how to do any of that sort of stuff. So I would bring them back to Kansas State and keep them for several months. Then I would put them out on farms in the summertime and let them meet farm families and work with farm people. And then I'd go out there and work with them. And then I'd come after they completed that. Well, we would come back to the university, and I'd take them back to Washington. They go back to Kenya. Most of them came from Kenya.
Did you have any jobs before you were in the military?
What?
Any jobs before entering the service?
I held several jobs before I went to service. I worked in a shirt factory there at Webb City, the Smith Brothers factory, and I was shipping clerk there for several years before I decided, and before I was drafted.
So did you or any of your parents or siblings?
I also worked on the dairy farm.
Oh, okay. Did any of your parents or siblings serve in the military?
It was
Any of your parents or siblings serve?
no.
Okay. Can you tell us about when you went into the military?
Well, I remember I was drafted, and I just married my high school sweetheart. We'd been married 2 years, and then I was drafted, and I was shipped over to England, and I was put in a unit that came from that had been fighting over in Sicily and Italy. And they put me in that unit, and that's the one I went through the war with.
How old were you?
How old was I? 18.
Yes, sir. 18. And how did your parents feel about you being drafted?
Well, of course, they hated to see me go because on a dairy farm, we milked all the cows by hand. We didn't have any machinery, so it's a job. But I loved every minute of it, and I'm sure they missed me when I was gone.
So you left your wife and who else did you leave behind when you went to serve?
Well, she worked at Southwestern Bell in the telephone office. And when they sent me to Fort Jackson, South Carolina for my basic training, she transferred down there, so she got to be with me before I went overseas.
Did you have any friends from your neighborhood or hometown that also served?
Friends?
Well, not close friends that I knew of but yes, but a lot of them from my hometown and some that were with me in high school, but they separated everybody. I didn't get to see them until they came home.
And what happened when you departed for training camp and during your early days of training or schooling?
Well, of course, training to me was something, it was kind of hard to get used to doing different things all the time and not knowing what you were going to do next, because on a farm we had our jobs to do. We got them done and got it done, got the cows in, got them milked, and got everything else. So you either worked or you didn't get any milk. but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed every minute of it.
And where were you stationed for your training basics?
Jackson, South Carolina.
Okay. What's your most vivid memory of your training or in school?
Well, I think the thing I enjoyed the most is I did just like I did when I went overseas. I wasn't then, but I enjoyed meeting other people, talking with them, and working with them. And the young men that I worked with overseas all through the war were like brothers to me. And which I'll tell you later when I lost them all, it's something that I will never forget. Because like I said, they were like brothers to me. And I lost them all. I was the only one out of the 5 members in my squad that made it back. And God's been good to me, so I have no reason to complain. I told somebody the other day that if my country called me again, I'd be the first in line because I love my country.
That's
and
awesome.
But it's hard to take some of the things that you have to see, and I don't think the people today realize what our veterans have gone through and what they gave up, and a lot of them didn't make it back. But it's something they need to know about.
Sure.
They gave it all, and that's, you can't do any better than that.
So in your training, what was the worst part of training?
Well, I had never worked very much with firearms or anything like that, but I was trained as a squad leader in a 60 millimeter squad. And I had these 5 men underneath me, and that's what I was put in when I went overseas. And I was with the 1st Army 9th Infantry Division, the oldest division in the Army. And they had just come out of Sicily and Italy. They'd been in war over there. And I went into battle with them. D-Day.
So tell me about how you adapted to military life including the physical regiment, barracks, the food, social life?
Well, I didn't really have any trouble. I think the main thing was that you just miss being with family and friends, and oh, as I had told my family many times, I said, you haven't any idea what those men and what we went to. I went all through World War II, through France, through Belgium, and through Germany. I didn't ride anything. I walked. And that's why my legs are wore out today. And I slept on the ground. All I had was a blanket and a raincoat. And I'll tell you, we had some rough times because the weather was terrible. And the worst of it all, of which I'll tell you about later, was when we would get caught in those forests, like the Hurtgen forest and the forest there in Belgium. The Germans would catch us in there, and of course, you don't realize what's going to happen until those shells hit those trees, and you can't get away from them. That shrapnel goes every direction, and you're going to get it from one way or the other. And I think those were some of the worst battles and times I had in the service.
Sure.
And we lost lots of men.
So, what was the easiest part of military lifestyle for you?
Oh, I guess getting to come home and eat fried chicken. All I had to eat all the time I was over there was 3 cans, pork and beans, meat hash, and I forgot what the other one was. That's all we had every day.
Did you have to adjust to following orders or commanding from your commanding officers?
I didn't hear that.
Did you have to adjust for just to following orders?
Oh, no, I didn't have any problem with that.
And what were your commanding officers like?
What?
What were your commanding officers like?
They were good officers. I think I was lucky. I had some of the finest generals that were in the service. My outfit was under General Bradley.
Oh.
And I remember I've still got it written down in my book over there, my Bible. Before we got on the boats to go in on D-Day, President Eisenhower gave us, I think, one of the most wonderful messages I ever heard. And he was frank about everything. He didn't pull any punches. He told us all, he said, you're going into face an army that is better than you are. They have better equipment than you have. And you're going to have some tough times. You're going to be outnumbered, and you're going to lose a lot of fellow soldiers. But he said, let's put your faith in God. Ask him to follow you and keep you. And I said, that's what I've done all through my experience. And every time I would have a hard situation that I didn't think we were going to get through it, I asked God to watch over us, and he's always answered my prayer.
Now, I know you served in a couple of places. Where did you serve? And tell us a little bit about the memories and what were some of the things you noticed or learned?
In Belgium?
Well, where did you serve?
Now tell your story.
I didn't get it.
Just tell your story from D-Day on.
Oh,
Yeah,
Well,
where
on
did
D-Day-
where did you serve? Overseas.
I didn't, right. On D-Day, we landed on of course, at Normandy.
Just a minute.
Yes, sir. We landed at Normandy on D-Day, and our outfit, we landed on Utah Beach, not Omaha. They were one side by side, pretty much. Omaha was, of course, I have to admit, was the men there had the hardest time because they had to climb those mountains. But they send us on up from Utah up. I don't know what they call it. I guess they call it the. Anyway, it was up towards Cherbourg. And why was that done? I always ask the question, and the answer I always got, well, the Germans all along thought we were going to land at Cherbourg, and they had it pretty well fortified. But Eisenhower fooled them, and he landed it at Normandy down there at where they landed on Omaha Beach. But they sent us on up, and why I don't know. But they sent us on up the beach. We went right on up towards Cherbourg, and that's the answer I was given. I couldn't understand it all, but we had some tough fighting. But I'm sure we didn't have near what they did at Omaha. But we lost a lot of men.
Were there any other battles that you were involved in?
Yeah, I was from there on, as I told you, I never wrote anything. I walked everywhere with my squad. And I lived from D-Day, Udall Peace, we went to Cherbourg, then we went over through France, helped liberate Paris, St. Lo, and then after we went through most of France there, excuse me, we went through Belgium. And the Siegfried Line, and well, I'll just list a few of them here. We went through the Hurricane Forest there in Belgium, which was a terrible battle. And then we went over into Germany, and I went through one of the worst battles we had. I wound up, my last place in Germany was Schevenhütte, a little town by the name of Schevenhütte. And we ran the Germans out of there one evening, and we set our guns up at the churchyard. And the Germans shelled us all night because they had been there before. They knew where everything was. And we got up the next morning, and the captain said, "Sergeant, you're going to have to move your guns." I said, "Captain, those Germans know every place in this town." It was a small town. And I said, they're going to throw all of it at us. He said, "I can't help it. That's my orders. Get them moved." So we moved them a little ways down the road behind next to another building down there. And my first gunner didn't even get the tripod in the ground. And this shell hit us. We didn't hear it coming. We didn't know what it was. And that's all I remember. After that, I woke up in England several days later, and I was unconscious. They didn't think I was going to make it, and I stayed there about, I estimated 15 or 20 days in bad shape. Then after that, I went back. They had the Battle of the Bulge going on, and Eisenhower gave the order, get every man up that can carry a gun or that can walk, get him back, get him back. The Germans had broke through. So they sent me back. I got back there. My captain said, Sergeant, I hate to tell you this, but did you know you lost all 5 of your men the day you got hit? I said, oh, my Lord, no. He said, yes, you did. And I went through that to the end of the war. And I got to come home early because I'd been hit 3 times. I had 3 Purple Hearts. I had more points than the rest. But I got to come early, but that was the worst place I'd ever been. And I think of those guys every day because, like I said, they were like brothers to me. But things like that are hard to swallow. They're hard to take. But I think I had the good Lord to turn to because I have learned the lesson from that. That everything, I don't care how bad it gets or how worse it gets, if you pray about it, the Lord will answer your prayer. He's always there for you. Like he said in the Bible, I will never leave you or forsake you. And I found that to be true.
So
And
I know
I
that
came
you,
from the, yeah,
go ahead.
finished up before I came home. I was in the Battle of the Bulge. And I ended up with frozen toes and a lot of things that bother me today. That's why I've been in and out of the hospital too much. And I've had a lot of heart trouble. I had to replace my main heart valve. It hasn't been working exactly right. But like I said, the Lord's been there for me. I just celebrated my 96th birthday.
Happy birthday. Now, I know that you said you talked about your 5 friends.
When I came home, my outfit was we crossed the Remogan Bridge. That was a terrible battle. And we got through it.
So what was it like? 4 days on the.
Yeah.
Explain that. Tell them about it.
Yeah, it took us about 4 days to cross the Remogan Bridge. We caught the Germans by surprise, but they had the bridge all geared up with bombs, and we couldn't get any machinery or tanks or anything across it. But we got through it, got on the other side, and we laid there for about 3 days. We caught everything they had, but we made it. And finally, when they could get the engineers could get up there and knock those bombs out, and then we could get our tanks across. Then we opened it up and made it possible for some of the other outfits to get through. That's basically it.
So you talked about your 5 people underneath you. Did you have any other friends while you were serving? Did you build any friendships while you were serving?
I'm hard of hearing.
Yes, sir. Any friendships while you were serving? Any friendships while you were serving?
What was that?
Let's see if there's a question.
Excuse me.
No, you're fine.
Can you take just a second there? You need to tell me. You started 2025.
Well, when they crossed.
Wait a second.
All right.
I'm gonna try to find that question. Do you know which question that is?
Well,
Yeah, it's on page 3. What kind of friendships did you have while you were in the service?
what kind of
Okay.
one?
He still has,
Friends.
do you want him to finish his war experiences because he still has to get across? the
Oh,
line?
yeah, most definitely. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he's.
Well, when we crossed,
Wait, are you ready to record?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
we crossed the bridge, got over into Belgium. We got to see what. We started with 225 men, and we ended up with 80. That's how tough it was. We lay there 3 days, and they gave us on the side of that mountain, those mountains, and they gave us everything they had. But we also got over into some of the prison camps that the Germans had, and we liberated a lot of the people that were in one of the worst camps that I guess they have. They called it Dachau. There was 2. Auschwitz was the worst, but we got into Dachau and we liberated all those people that was in there. Germany how they worked, they had a gas chamber, and the people they didn't like, they put them in one of these camps, and then they would run them through the gas chamber. And that's a terrible sight to see something like that. And then, then we went mostly through Dachau and the concentration camp in southern Germany. And then we went back to the last days to Berlin. And actually, people don't remember this, or evidently they weren't told about it. We went through Berlin, and we didn't have any resistance whatsoever, none. And it was hard to realize what was going on. And the captain said, "Well, we're going to back." We went in canoes down the Elbe River to Berlin. We went into Berlin. There wasn't a soul in there. We didn't have any resistance whatsoever. And the captain said, "Well, we're going to have to load up, go back where we came from." We all said, "Well, what? Are we going to stay in Berlin?" He said, "No. It's been given to the Russians." And they'd already, and he said they're on their way over here. They got there before we got out. But that's what that was all about. But we had a hard time putting up with it because we were looking for a battle there. But that's about it.
So we'll go back. Did you have any friends? Did you build any friendships while you were serving?
All of my men, like I told you, of course, they didn't make it, but even the other men in the deal, we were all like brothers. I know any one of them would have done anything I would ask them to do, and I would have for them. That's what we felt about each other. And do what?
Did you keep in touch with any of them after the war?
After the war, I had them come from Kansas State. Some that I had taught in before I went would come down and talk to me, and I've had a lot of them that I was in the service with calling me, but I never had any of them really come down because they're too far away. But
Did you stay in touch with your family while you were over there? Did you stay in touch with your family at all? Were you able to contact your family?
Well, No, I didn't have any way to keep in touch with them very much because we were on the move all the time. Yes, after we got somewhere, I didn't even have time to shave. I had a beard about like that. I told them when I come back, since then, a lot of my friends will ask me,
Power off.
why don't you have a beard? I said, you couldn't shoot me to wear a beard. I said, I couldn't stand one. I wore one. I said, all the itch and scratch all the time. And I said, I never had a chance to shave. I said, don't ask me about beard.
So, were you able to send anything back home while you were overseas?
did I want?
Send anything back home?
No, I don't ever remember sending anything back.
I know you didn't have much recreation time, but what did you do while you were off duty?
Well, I have to think a little bit about that. Most of the time when we were off duty, we were trying to get our equipment fixed up so it would work right. And our job mainly in the 60 millimeter mortars, we were right behind the main infantry that was fighting with gun to gun. And our job was to keep them from getting pinned down. And that's what we did. And if we couldn't do it, then the bigger artillery had to do it. But we got into all the battles and to get the rifle companies out. That was our job.
When you were over there overseas, were you able to keep up with the news?
Not very good. Only when we got to stop for a few minutes and got maybe got some mail from home. The only news we got was what was in a letter or something from our relatives.
What were the
And
living
about all
What were the
What?
living conditions like? What was
Well, what else could we do? We were on the move all the time. And like I said, all I had was 3 cans of beans every day, and I had a raincoat and a blanket. At night, I either slept with my back up against a tree, or I slept under a tree, or next to a building if I could get to it. I didn't have any barracks to go into or anything, but we made it.
so? Do you recall the day your service ended? Where were you?
Well, trying to remember. I think they sent, because I was one of the few that had more points because of my Purple Heart, they sent me back to Germany, and I can't think of the name of that big fancy motel. Yeah, Garmisch-Partenkirchen. Did you ever hear of it?
No, sir.
It's a big fancy, it seemed like big and fancy to us, but they sent us back there and we spent a day or two there before we got on the ships to come home.
And how was your family when you got home?
Well, of course they were looking forward to it. They didn't know when I was going to get there, but they were, like any family, why we had quite a celebration. Yeah.
And what I know that you got the Purple Hearts. What other awards or promotions did you receive?
Well, I got my 3 Purple Hearts. I have a good conduct medal. I've got 4 Bronze Stars for the campaigns I was in, France, Europe, the Ardennes, and the Rhineland. And I got a diploma from France on from the liberation of Paris. And I have a label entitled to wear an American Theater Campaign ribbon. Got one from the European, African, Middle East, and 2 overseas bars.
Did you, what was the best part of your,
It was,
what was the best part of your experience in the service?
well, I think the best part was that you learn how to get along with everybody. Now, I don't care who you are, where you go. When you get in a mixed group like the Army, you're going to meet people that you don't agree with. But that doesn't mean that you have to hate them, because you got to work with them every day. Instead, like the Bible said, you got to love them. That's what God put us on this earth for. To love and care for each other, not to kill and murder everybody or rape everybody or steal what they've got. You're supposed to take what the Lord blesses you with and help others.
Um,
What
how
I've
did you-
learned mostly is it shouldn't be a give, it shouldn't be a take world, it should be a give world.
How did you readjust when you got back? Did you go back to school or right to work?
No, I had a little business of my own for a while because I'm a farm boy. I always dealt with farm people, and I have all my life. And so I had a feed store. I sold feed and stuff to farmers for their equipment for the animals and stuff. And I did that until for several years. And then my wife told me, she said, "Well, why don't you go back? Why don't you go to college and get your degree? You like to teach?" And I said, "Well, I don't know." So I sold my business and went back, and I got my BS in agriculture. And then I went back a little later and I got my master's in ag education. That's when I started teaching at the university at Manhattan. I taught international ag students for 2 years. And I would go overseas and get these Kenya students, the best students that Kenya had. Like I said, we were sending tractors and equipment over there and nobody knew how to use them. So they would send me their best students. They wanted to be county agents, like our county agents. I would take them back to Manhattan, keep them there for several weeks in the university and teach them. Then I'd put them out on Kansas farms and I'd go out there and work with them every day. And then at the end of that training, they'd come back. I'd take them to Washington, put them on planes, they'd go back and serve in their country. I did that for 2 years. And then I started teaching. I decided I wanted to teach high school, so I did. I spent 30 years in high school teaching ag. I like it because you deal personally with the kids and with the parents. There's no better teaching than that.
Did you join any veteran organizations when you got back?
Did I join any? Oh, yes. I have belonged to the American Legion. I'm now a lifetime member in the DAV. And I have been ever since I've been out.
How did your military experience affect your life?
Well, I think one thing that I told you earlier, because it doesn't matter where you go or what you do, you're going to run into a lot of people that you don't agree with. And people are going to do things that make you unhappy. But like the Lord said, we got to learn to love everybody. It doesn't mean you hate them and try to kill them. We should be trying to help them. And it just makes a better world all the way around. When, like somebody once said, when we're unified, we grow. When we're not, we're divided, and we're gonna perish.
How has your military service impacted your feelings about war and the military in general?
Well, I'm not a believer in war. That's one thing for sure. I think we should do everything in the world to keep from having to put our people through a war. And I don't know all the answers. I don't claim to, but I think the best thing we can do is to try to get along with people and help people to grow and to learn to care about each other and to help each other. This is what I liked being around farm people. When I was a kid on the farm, when we had something to do or we'd have some problems, we didn't have to ask anybody to do it. They was always there to help us. You don't see that today. The other thing that bothers me more than anything, and especially in young people, nobody knows how to say thank you. You can do things for people. You can help them with things. They just grab it and take off. Or they try to rob it and they try to steal it. They can't say, well, thank you, Jim. I appreciate that. That wasn't the way I was taught.
Yes, sir. What message would you leave for younger generations who will see this interview in the future?
Well, first thing I will ask them, you need to pray about your condition. And if you've got a lot of sin in your life and problems in your life, you need to seek the Lord Jesus and ask him for help. I'm a Christian. I'm a firm Christian. I believe in God and I believe in Jesus Christ. And I believe he died for all of our sins, and we need to show our appreciation for it. And the only way and the reason he put us on this world is to tell other people about who he is and what he did for us. And my daughter is a missionary. She recently went to, I think it was, what was it? She told me they'd never heard of you.
Well, I was in Russia.
I
was in Russia.
Well, several places she went, and they were big countries, told her they'd never heard of Jesus. Well, that means we're not doing our job. We're not doing what God told us to do. He told us, tell them what my son did for you. He saved my life twice. He's brought me through a lot of rough situations. I don't fear anything today because I know when I pray about it, he's always there for me. And he always has been. He said, I will never leave you or forsake you. And he's kept his promise.
Is there anything more that you'd like to say? Anything that we may have not asked you that you want to discuss? If so, what?
Power off.
I think it's a lot of. I think we've got a situation in the world today where people, as I said, it doesn't seem like the younger generation has forgot about giving. It's all taking. And that isn't what God put us here for. We're here to help each other. Today, it seems like everybody, all they want to do is somebody I said something to the other day. Well, why should I accept him? What's in it for me? And that's the attitude of most of our world today. What's in it for me? I don't care about him. What's in it for me? That's not right. And I thank God with this epidemic that we've had, don't let anybody kid you. In my own personal mind, I believe God's trying to tell us something. It's an abomination of the way the world is acting today. It's an abomination. And he's going to do something about it.
Mr. Housman? Yeah. Well, thank you so much. We'll be in touch with you in the future and with Robin and let her know what's going on. We really do appreciate your time, and your stories are incredible. Thank you for your service, and thank you for all that you mean to this nation.
I certainly appreciate everything the service has done for me. I had some rough times, but the DA has been good to me. I can't complain at all. And everybody I've worked with in the service-connected services has done a good job, and I think they need to grow.
Thank you, sir. Have a nice day.
Thank you. God bless you.
God bless you.